kick it off, I guess I'd like to just sort of start with what was one of your happiest, best moments while working on your startup to date? If you guys want to go around and answer that, just best.
The day the wire transfer for our seed funding completed, I was actually at Burning Man with the lead investor, and his firm had wired the money, and we went to the temple and set an intention, and it was a really cool moment.
Incredible.
That's awesome. I'll go. I mean, getting any of the funding, right? That's always a wonderful day for any startup, when, regardless of how much it is, or just giving you that ability. But one of the best moments is kind of seeing the company's engine, like whatever it is you're creating, actually come to fruition, and seeing your customer actually get the benefit of it. So for us, it was watching some of the stuff that we've built take companies that couldn't compete at a certain level and becoming the top sellers on like Amazon, which is a very big deal for a small company to suddenly beat out some of the big giants. So that was definitely a great period of time for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think mine's along the same lines. I think the best night, and this is a riddled experience for me because I think I had been up for like 3 days straight and living in my office for some time at this point. But the night the game actually launched, I think was the most thrilling. So I was so scared beforehand of if it was going to flop, if it was going to fail en masse on everyone's phone. And just, we stayed up even after launch for like another 24 hours, and we watched it rise to like #1 on the charts. And it was an incredible, like just blissfully happy time.
I would say that seeing the feedback form from our users and see how they describe our experiences, and that's very fulfilling. And especially when we design something that meant to visualize to some knowledge, and we saw people got it and they got touched by it, and that's very fulfilling.
Bruce, what was your happiest moment? What was the best moment so far working on your startup? Let's hear it. Oh, you're muted. Oh, you're muted.
Clearly, like with, oh, there, how about now? Clearly with all the, like the other startups, you know, it's the day that when you take something when you make something from nothing, you know, you really have an idea, you build a team, and then you have that first day. And for us, it was, after a year, we finally had created, you know, our first pop-up, which was Alien Zoo at the Westfield Century City Mall. You know, just watching the guests or the audience go in and coming out with their minds blown and getting the reaction that, you know, you hope to get, and even beyond what you hope to get. And it was very similar to what I experienced when we would do Disney attractions. It was just much more expected at Disney. This was something brand new, and you just didn't know. You know, you get so deep into it that you're wondering, you know, are we crazy? Maybe we just like, you know, maybe we like it because we did it. But it is an amazing experience when you see the audience, you know, react in a positive way.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's been really inspiring listening to you all speak this evening. So just, yeah, thank you. Now I'm excited about it all. We have one question from Natasha, who's asking just like, what are some of the other companies working in this space that you think are cool? Like, who are the sort of, I think that as like the artists, like who as creators, like do you guys kind of look to or want to emulate or start inspired by?
I like, if we talk about VR, I really like the Tender Claw, the Tempest experiences. That's very inspiring. It's an immersive theater that is interacting with live actors, and it's a great one.
Yeah, I don't know.
From my perspective.
Thank you.
I'm personally very impressed by like Snap taking advantage of AR and really kind of, as well as Apple, really pushing augmented reality as a a platform to the masses without some of those experiences, I think, you know, adoption is the biggest key to this industry kind of moving forward. And so Snap and Apple specifically, and you know, Facebook got in it as well. So they're really pushing that tech on their platforms, which is helping just everyone know what it is. Because 5 years ago, if you had said AR, people would have thought you were talking about like a rifle, or wouldn't have known at all what those acronyms were. So now it's actually becoming more synonymous and becoming part of the lexicon of just regular culture.
In general, I really like the fitness applications. I find them the most well designed for repeat usage, which I think is very important for the category to actually drive mass adoption. And I think it's a use case that emerged that was unexpected by even some of the platform entities, and those experiences are the ones that seem to have the most ongoing retention and engagement.
I think for me, I mean, I agree with Snap on the AR front, but overall in the XR space, I've actually been most inspired by maybe not the things like the UGC type of things. So things that I saw in VR chat, or in, if you're in Rec Room ever, some of the random worlds that are built there, I think are so interesting and entertaining. There's something very interesting to me about what people are choosing to build and like how detailed and intense some of these worlds are. And so for me, that's where I personally see like get the most inspiration.
Very cool. We have a question for you in particular, Kirin. Are you going to open up, John 9 asks, are you going to open up your engine to other gaming companies, or what's your plan there?
Yeah, it's a question we've been getting a lot, honestly. I think that actually, I think actually this year that we will. Initially, we were keeping it kind of highly proprietary, but we've been getting a lot of questions around this, and I think ultimately we see it as our larger mission to not just create great content, and we'll continue to create first-party content, but to fuel and accelerate AR development. And since there just aren't that many players at the moment outside of like the really big ones like Snap and Niantic, but I think the short answer is yes, most likely in the next few months you'll see some announcements on that front.
Very cool.
Somebody asked me what my favorite fitness apps are. The one I do the most is Supernatural. I think it's just beautiful to be in, and but somebody was just telling me the Thrill of the Fight. One of our, quite a few of our users are doing the Thrill of the Fight and then Trip right after. So it's kind of like a peanut butter and chocolate daily usage pattern that we've heard this over and over from several users on, so I have to check that out, but I've been using Supernatural the most.
Let's see. Getting more here. So just a question to you from Mia. Did you find obtaining funds an issue?
What was the question?
Well, so she said that she was just in a virtual production meetup last night, and they mentioned how they wished more funding was available in AR and VR. So
yeah, I mean, I think VR went through a VR hot, then a VR not, then it seems to be kind of, yeah, a little more interest. Definitely the therapeutic side have been getting funding, and so it's definitely not, it's not easy, but I feel like there's a lot more receptivity to it. I think that what we're seeing is more of like a weekly usage pattern. And considering something is like on average, we're seeing 2 to 4 sessions per week, but there's a category of daily users really growing that we're noticing. VR, it's not a device you're at least for now, carrying around in your pocket all day long. So I think measuring the usage patterns against mobile apps, you know, I think we have to figure out what are the actual VR usage patterns. It seems to me it's more like a 2 to 3, 2 to 4 times weekly if there's a reason to go back into something. And we're seeing more heavier usage on the weekends as well.
From the funding side that we've seen, you know, VR did go through that big like gold rush back in like 2017, 2018, 2015 through 2017, really. They're like this massive gold rush. If you just put VR on a deck, they would like, here's a $5 million check, here you go, right? But I think what happened is you get a lot of those investments that didn't really have practical applications or a business model around them. And what happens is that burns a lot of investors. And so they're going to be much more trepidatious to signing a check or investing in something if it doesn't have a proper business plan associated with it, with a marketplace that is actually there. So VR went through that early stage of it's so cool, and everyone's like, oh my God, and billions of dollars got poured into it. But then massive companies, you know, started to fold because there just wasn't the use case there. There wasn't the business use case. And so it was a lot of money invested, but not a lot of money made. And I think if you have a good idea these days that actually has a good business use case, and you know, like for VR, I've been to Bruce's experiences multiple times. I lived over in Los Angeles near their Century City one, and that's a great business use case, right? Like it just makes sense. You have people coming in, it's a wonderful experience, and so it makes sense why someone would want to invest in that. And so if you have something that has a practical use case and a business model around it, then the money's out there, right? The investors are always looking for a real business to invest in. It might be a little bit harder because now you're dealing with all of the spurned investors from before. So.
Yeah, and there's at least in the mental health space, there's a fair amount of funding from grants. You know, we received a $1.7 million fast track award from the NIH and SBIR grant. We're filing a whole new wave of the new submissions are due February 5th. So there's a whole, you know, so grant money, at least if you're focused on wellness and therapeutics, there's a fair amount of funding available.
Yeah, it's good advice for people who might be interested in to sort of find alternative ways of getting funding. Don't just think you need to go to the.
But dealing with the government websites, I mean, I've been 3 days setting up more accounts and updating. They're definitely not spending their money on engineering talent, so.
For anyone who might be interested in sort of entrepreneurship themselves, especially in this space, do you have any advice or like what's like your one little bit of like, what's the tidbit, the nugget?
You know, I was talking to a friend of mine who I kind of mentor, and I said, you know, this idea, it's like so, and you seem only slightly passionate about it. You really have to love the idea because the pain gets offset. You can push through the pain of being a founder because you're so motivated by the mission. And I can tell you this past year during quarantine at the beginning was so tough for us because we didn't know how this would, it ended up ultimately being great for our business because people, you know, really turned toward entertainment and VR, and you know, us being focused on stress management, we found our audience, we found our product market fit in quarantine. But it, you know, there were many dark nights where I didn't know like how we were going to go forward, and the mission and seeing the user feedback and being motivated to try to, you know, get this to the next level, you know, really pushed me through that. And I would say as an entrepreneur, if you don't feel really driven by that, you should do some more soul searching to connect to it.
I think passion.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, yeah, you definitely have to, you know, love what you're setting out to do, because it is painful. The raising of the money is, you know, and we've done quite well, so I think we feel very fortunate. But the amount of time, it's always 10 times longer than you think. You're always, close to the edge. So the other thing I think that in addition to the passion for what you're actually trying to accomplish, which is paramount, is who you surround yourself with. You need the right team. You've got to enjoy showing up with these people, and those people have to enjoy, it's not smooth sailing in the beginning at all, or maybe, even throughout the process. So these are people that you have to want to weather a storm with over and over. And if you do that, I think it can be unbelievably satisfying, more so than, corporate America or something like this, because you really are creating.
I think passion is a really important feature of any entrepreneur, but also realizing that oftentimes when, it's a lot of it is about timing more than anything. And, timing and preparation equals luck, right? Like those two things, if you're at the right place and the right time and you're prepared for it, that's what people call luck, right? And sometimes it's that you might be prepared, you might be so passionate about an idea, but also be prepared to modulate that idea based upon feedback, right? You hear it all the time. It's like eBay wasn't eBay when they first started, and like Netflix wasn't Netflix, PayPal wasn't PayPal. Instagram came out of a completely different game-based thing. So like all of these massive multi-billion-dollar companies had to pivot at some point because where they were going, their preparation was such, but the timing was off. And so they had to go back to the drawing board, pivot their tech or pivot their idea, and make sure they were still passionate about that to bring it to market to something that was the right time. And I think that's timing more than anything, I think is important in all of this, because you can have the best idea ever, but if you're too soon or you're too late, you're going to miss out.
So one question sort of following up on that for Bruce is, do you have any advice for finding this right team? What do you look for?
Yeah, so, I've always looked for, quite frankly, and I seriously mean this, people much smarter than myself, and then experts in their various fields. And if it's the startup world, again, you have to go back to people that just are in it for the passion and the satisfaction of trying to create something from nothing, from not thinking of it as a corporate ladder that they're trying to climb, but more like, hey, we're doing something, unique. So it has to be people who have a entrepreneurial spirit, an innovative spirit, people who love the sense of being sort of on the precipice all the time. So there's a certain breed of people, and that's not everybody. It really isn't. There's other people who just love the security and are quite good at, the more production kind of formulaic kinds of things. And so I look for highly creative people who don't just bring one expertise to the table. I love what I call Swiss Army knife kind of people who are in the beginning, certainly when you're a small team, are willing to roll up their sleeves and do what has to be done. I mean, when we started Dreamscape, there was 5 of us. And so we were all setting up computers, and you switch hats, when we're setting up the system and putting together trusts and everything in the beginning, I listen to my team because they're better at it than I am. And, then I would go back to being, at that time I was CEO, and going back to being CEO when I was a bigger meeting. And so you have to be sort of flexible and being willing to do this. And again, like I said, that's not everybody. So as you interview, they have to be great at whatever you're going to be, their primary role is going to be. I think that is, very, very important that they really are, they bring a certain expertise. Even if they're young, you can see the potential. You see that they're going to evolve quickly. I think that's important. Do they have the ability to evolve? But then also, are they willing to, not a sense of entitlement, but a sense of like, hey, this is can do. We're going to have to jump in and just make this happen and be flexible. And, those are the things that I really look for. And then, I think your team has to evolve as you move forward. You get more of the, people who are more of the, I think soldiers, who, as you grow the company and certain things, you begin to hand off to those people who are just much more, they get the process and they're very good at it and they bring a solidity and form to it. I much prefer the beginning and innovative side myself, where it's risky. I get a little bored when it gets a little like, like it's that we understand the business too well now, and then I'm sort of want to move on to the next thing. But I think that's important,
So we have one question left here. We'll do this one. For the AR developers, express your thoughts regarding new depth-based camera packages beginning to show up on newer products, i.e. Apple LiDAR. Which challenges do the integration of these new depth sensor-based technologies present?
I would actually say not which challenges do they represent, like what opportunities do they represent? Flip that around, because it's only adding to the experiences. Those, it's literally opened up a whole new world that previously was very highly computational and accurate. Now suddenly you have these depth cameras and devices that it's the number of things that you can do with them suddenly, even strapping one of those onto a VR headset to give you depth sensing inside of a room. I mean, it's just incredible. It's not really the technology is not really the challenge. The challenge is like, what can't you do with that sort of, opportunity with these LiDARs now?
Yeah, I totally agree. I've spent a good amount of time playing around with a lot of those new things, whether that's the Google depth sensing side or like the Apple LiDAR. And I think they both present huge opportunities, but in particular, the hardware-based advances just absolutely blow the software ones out of the water, frankly. And so for me, I guess the only challenge I can think of is just market adoption of like how quickly that kind of hardware becomes the standard, I think is the most interesting part of it. Because if it's only a very small segment of the consumer market, I think we won't see the most interesting applications because there's not a strong enough business case.
I think they've sold hundreds of millions of phones at this point. So I think we're probably going to be okay in the next year or two.
I think one thing that will drive a lot of adoption of the head-mounted displays, the smart glasses, will be dynamic vision correction. I think that you have 70% of the world's population needs vision correction, and if it can, auto adjust based on focus and proximity, I think that will drive a lot of the transition from a portion of computing moving from the hand to the head. And so we've seen Apple's patents in that area, and we've seen Google's acquisition of North. And I think those are very interesting. How many years out will it be? But I would sign up for the contacts as well.
Yeah.
I would like to say about LiDAR and those 3D scanning technologies, because it really provides a lot of data. So if you're a developer, you got to jump in right now before they block it somehow using machine learning.
Mm. Somebody asked a question about 5G. One of the things we're doing with our work on the Nreal platform is also looking at how much of our experience we can put on the edge and stream down. One of my previous jobs was at a company called Gaikai. That was an early cloud gaming company, which interestingly, and a lot of the founding team for Oculus came from that company. It's kind of remarkable. We would do in the cloud gaming space, you could see a dumb terminal like a low-end tablet. You could play Crisis on it, which was kind of remarkable. It was all streamed from the cloud. So I think we're now beginning to, with T-Mobile's network and companies like Mobile Edge X that are helping the operators deploy 5G, there's some interesting opportunities to look at how to get very high-end experiences streamed down. We're trying to look at some of the latency impact right now, doing some preliminary tests.
Yeah, and for us, we're working with Verizon and AT&T both on 5G. And for us, the immediate benefit would be getting rid of the backpack. Moving to something ultimately that's just a head mount, or maybe something that's like a size of an Apple TV puck that you wear. And that's operationally just, the backpack right now is, I think, it's fine. It's sort of fun for people to put on, and all this kind of feels like you're putting some sort of scuba equipment or some sort of harness, like you're going to go ziplining. But in the long run, it's something that you'd love to get rid of.